the gospel community has been hit with a wave of grief. At 92 years old, the beloved Mama Mosie Burks has passed on, leaving behind a legacy that shook every corner of the church world. Her death has struck a chord so deep that even the strongest voices in gospel found themselves trembling. But what really happened during her final days? And what unfolded at her funeral left everyone present emotionally overwhelmed. It was more than a farewell, it was a divine encounter. In the landscape of gospel, some voices become timeless, threading their way through generations. Mama Mosie Burks was one of those rare voices that seemed to transcend time itself. Presence, her voice, and her unwavering spirit lifted millions and brought down the house in every sanctuary she stepped into. But now, the fire of her voice has been quieted. Her physical presence is gone, yet what she left behind is far greater than melodies, as a spiritual footprint etched into the hearts of believers. Worldwide. Born in 1931 in the heart of Mississippi, Mosie Burks grew up in a home grounded in church and tradition. She was one of many children raised in a family where singing wasn't just a pastime, it was a lifeline. From a young age, Mosie realized her voice wasn't ordinary. It was a divine gift. When she sang, it wasn't just music, it was ministry. Her sound brought grown folks to their knees. You could feel heaven open every time she opened her mouth in song. She carried her gift through trials, through poverty, through segregation, and the civil rights era, turning her pain into praise. Before the world knew her name, her local church had already been moved by her Sunday morning hymns. But her reach expanded far and wide when, in the late 1980s, the Mississippi Mass Choir was born. Founded by gospel visionary Frank Williams, the choir became a global force in gospel music, and Mosie became its soul. Her voice, raw with emotion and thick with anointing, was unforgettable. Whether it was When I Rose This Morning or God's Been Good to Me, she didn't just perform songs, she breathed life into them. Mosie didn't chase applause. Her voice wasn't for the stage, yet was for the Lord. Even into her 80s and 90s, Mama Mosie was on fire. Always dressed in her elegant church hats and radiant smile, she ministered with the same vigor that first introduced her to the world. She traveled extensively, uplifted thousands, and never once seemed to let age dim her flame. Seems time was starting to catch up. Though her spirit remained lively, her body began to slow. Quietly and gracefully, she began stepping back from rigorous travel. No longer making long-distance appearances, but still hosting impromptu porch concerts for neighbors who came by to be blessed one more time. Family and friends close to her shared that she battled age-related health issues in her last year's tiredness, joint pain, and general physical wear. But you'd never hear a complaint from her lips. Even when she couldn't stand, she'd sit and minister in song. One neighbor recalled how Mosie, barely able to move, would lift her hand and sing with her eyes closed, and you'd swear heaven was in that room. She gave her all, even when her strength was waning. She was preparing gently and peacefully for her transition. She spoke often about getting her house in order, not with fear, but with clarity. She knew where she was going. In her final weeks, Mosie was constantly surrounded by those she loved. Choir members, church family, and close friends made quiet visits to sing, to pray, and to simply be near her. There was no spectacle, no dramatic goodbyes, no hospital selfies posted for the world to see. Just calm, peace, faith. In one particularly emotional moment just weeks before she passed, Mosie asked her choir family to sing near the cross in her living room. She joined in faintly but intentionally, tears rolling down her face. When they finished, she whispered, "That's how I want to go out, with a song in my soul." She did just that. She passed away surrounded by prayer and peace. Her exit wasn't marked by sirens or fanfare, but by quiet dignity, the kind that only someone so deeply rooted in faith could experience. Days later, the Mississippi Mass Choir released a statement confirming her passing and honoring her incredible life. She fought a good fight. She kept the faith. And now she has earned her crown. What followed was an outpouring of love and grief that blanketed the gospel world. Shirley Caesar, Donnie McClurkin, Kirk Franklin, Yolanda Adams, and so many others expressed their heartbreak. Their tributes weren't just statements, they were love letters to a woman who shaped the sound and soul of modern gospel music. But nothing prepared anyone for the day of her funeral. On the morning of her homegoing service in Jackson, Mississippi, the streets were lined with people. Strangers, fans, and longtime church members filled New Hope Baptist Church. It was more than full, it was overflowing. People stood in long lines outside the sanctuary, some fanning themselves, others silently crying. Her casket, white with gold accents, was surrounded by massive floral arrangements. Sitting next to it was her signature church hata, quiet symbol of her grace and style. Then the music began. The Mississippi Mass Choir stood, dressed in coordinated robes. No instruments played, just voices. And as they sang When I Rose this morning, a wave of spirit filled the room. People stood up, hands lifted, some weeping uncontrollably. It felt like Mosie herself had joined them. Several choir members couldn't finish singing. Others sang even harder, trying to give everything they had to honor the woman who gave them everything she had for decades. The service continued with tributes from gospel legends. Shirley Caesar called her a warrior. Marvin Sapp said she didn't just sing gospel, she embodied it. But perhaps the most emotional part was the video montage. Her life, from joyful performances to heartfelt interviews, played on the screen. As her voice echoed through the speakers, the room became a sacred space. There wasn't a dry eye in sight. Toward the end of the service, something beautiful happened. The choir invited everyone in the room to join in singing I'll Fly Away, one of Mosie's favorite hymns. Suddenly, the funeral transformed into a praise break. Voices lifted in harmony. People danced. It wasn't sadness anymore, it was celebration. And when the final note rang out, the entire congregation stood in applause. Not for a performance, but for a life that had glorified God in every way. Outside, a white horse-drawn carriage waited to carry her body to its final resting place. The streets were filled with candle holders, hymn singers, and mourners who didn't want to say goodbye. It was a moment of reverence that transcended faiths, denominations, and backgrounds. But the most powerful part of Mosie Burks' story isn't how she left it. It's what she left behind. Her impact goes far beyond music. She was a spiritual anchor. Her presence was deeply woven into the fabric of gospel music. She stood at the intersection of tradition and modernity, bridging the past with the future. Her renditions of classics like I'm Not Tired Yet or Your Grace and Mercy weren't just performances, they were encounters. People testified of being healed just by hearing her voice. Entire altar calls would unfold before the first chorus even ended. When she sang, people felt like God was speaking directly to them. She influenced generations to Mama Moan. Leandria Johnson, Jonathan McReynolds, and so many others have credited Mosie as their inspiration. Her style, joyful, passionate, unrehearsed, became a blueprint for authentic gospel expression. Her presence, whether on stage or sitting quietly in a pew, was always filled with warmth, sincerity, and unshakable faith. Her legacy is threefold. Spiritually, she poured into others consistently, offstage and onstage. Culturally, she preserved the heritage of Southern gospel, keeping the sound of her ancestors alive. In her community, she was more than a singer. She was a neighbor, a mentor, a mother figure. And now, even in death, she continues to bless lives. Since her passing, her music has resurfaced on streaming charts. Churches have held special services just to play her recordings. Gospel networks are preparing tribute documentaries. Videos of her singing have gone viral, reminding the world that Mosie Burks was never about performance. She was about presence, Healing, praise. One of the most stirring parts of her story comes from her final public message. Wasn't scripted. It wasn't planned. It happened during a Sunday morning service not long before she passed. Mosie stood during testimony time, leaned on her cane and walked slowly to the pulpit. The room went completely silent. And then she said, "If the Lord calls me home tomorrow, I want y'all to know I'm ready. I done sang my last song, fought my last storm, and I still got my praise. Don't cry too long, just keep singing. That's how you'll keep me alive." She ended her words by softly singing, "It is well with my soul." The room broke. People shouted. Others sobbed. It was her final sermon, her last offering, and perhaps the most powerful moment of all. That clip has since circulated across social media. Gospel radio stations played it on loop the week after her funeral, followed by tributes and her most iconic songs. Her words, "Don't cry too long, just keep singing," have become a rallying cry for those mourning not only her death, but personal losses of their own. She's helping people grieve. She's helping them praise through pain. Mosie Burks didn't need a stage or spotlight to change the world. She used her voice, her faith, and her truth to draw people closer to God. And now, even in silence, her voice continues to speak. She may be gone, but Mama Mosie's spirit still lingers in the songs we sing, the praises we offer, and the memories we cherish. Her life was a melody of love, sacrifice, and worship. And that melody will never die.